You mentioned this. Our relationship with China. I don't think that our military is so much has been asleep about this, and I have to believe that they certainly saw it, but I think that they kind of missed these. They either missed these balloons that have been circumnavigating the U.S. They were told to just observe them until finally it just got to be so obvious to everybody that we were having some spy work done across the country. But we haven't been able to determine what kind of damage, what they actually saw when they came across the country. We have a strained but business-like relationship with China. We do, I would say, every other thing that we use: clothes, shoes, cars. Now we're getting cars in, and certainly the microchip issue with the cars that we use. We have a strange relationship, a business-like relationship with China that is going to take a long time, if ever, to be undone. I think I mentioned this once before. Back in the 70s, everybody was complaining about the stuff that we use, the toys and clothes, we all had this tag made in Japan. Well, that has changed now because the tags on most of the clothes and shoes, I know a pair of ladies' shoes that sells for $165 a pair and up, and they're just buying them like hotcakes. The company is based in San Francisco, but they have their all the manufacture of the shoes, the making of the shoes, is done in China, and because that's the cheapest place I guess they get to do it. These are made out of recycled water bottles, but that's just one item. We have a ton of them. So we got this relationship with China that's tied into our business, and that makes it difficult to, when we get on a warlike posture, the issue of Taiwan, for instance, about what we're going to actually do, makes it complicated. Is the only recourse we have is to simply make a full break from China business-wise? Can we make a full break from China business-wise, or are we stuck in this cross-purpose relationship?
You bring up a good point. My position that I saw, and the thing that Trump did with him that was so effective, was that he treated them exactly like you said, as a business partner. And as a business partner, he wanted them to buy our stuff and not just us importing all their stuff tariff-free, which puts us in an enviable, from a businessman's point of view, in a capitalist country, in a position where we're losing money all the time. The deficit is unbelievable. You're right. Every time I pick up something, I pick up this computer right now, this Dell computer, and I bet you that somewhere in it it was made in China. Components were made in China. You know, the keyboard or the mouse, whatever. But the issue is they have a business. They run a business, and we are not countering those huge trade deficits by any kind of business issue. And the position of the conservatives, because of the business relationship that the Bidens have with the Chinese, is it's hard to distinguish the Bidens' personal business, money that they have, obviously from these documents are showing, they've received money from the Bidens. In fact, when the Biden's vice president, this whistleblower says that he has proof, these documents, that the FBI has also, that they had definite financial gains that the Biden family got in exchange for policy decisions.
But it's not just the Biden family. This is the Chinese relationship rolls through every business relationship we have. We're having to we're now finally financing American companies to build these microchips that have been almost exclusively made in China. That has nothing to do with the Biden relationship.
I disagree with that, because
I mean, we talked about this, in our previous conversation. The minority leader of the Senate is married to a Chinese woman who has a father who has business relationships with that. But again, every major product that we use in the United States is tied some way to our business relationship with China. The question is, do we, and it's rather obvious, do we, the government, do we take more steps to cut the amount of business that we do with China so that we can be on a more business and equal political footing with them to talk about the issue of whether or not how much we would protect Taiwan if China decides to do what Russia is doing with Ukraine? That's the question, because it's tied throughout every fabric of our life here in America. It's not just the Bidens. He'll be out of office. What about everything else that we do with China?
Well, it certainly is the Bidens in a way, in that they are determining American policy towards the Chinese government.
Well, what is the policy? What is the policy with China? Do we just sit here and wait? Do we do what Trump did? Do we romanticize President Xi Jinping?
We do what Trump did.
Strong leader? What? What are we talking about?
He said that it's an unequal trade balance, and we're going to put tariffs on your imports. And guess what happened? All of a sudden, our coffers built up tremendously, and the Chinese started to import more of our goods and services. But under Biden's policy is let the Chinese do whatever the heck they want to do, because they have not done one thing to help us in the trade balance. And those of us that look at the history of the Biden family, it's tied in to, you have to wonder. Again, there's documents that say one way or the other this, which the FBI is sitting on, but there's no doubt that the policy decisions of this White House are based on the Biden's relationship with the Chinese.
So we put the tariffs back on the Chinese products, which jacks up the price of goods that Americans are buying, and then Americans begin to complain about the inflationary actions that are taken there. That's one aspect. That is one aspect of it. Let's assume that the Bidens have all of this, are doing this for purely personal gain. And when we talk about Bidens, we're only talking about Hunter Biden and the president, who at this point we haven't found any financial reason to it. But let's assume that that's the case. What about the other businesses in this country that are continuing to get goods manufactured in China and selling them back here to the U.S.? Why aren't we having more discussion about American businesses doing more things that are American made? The Biden has already indicated, as I indicated to you, with just the chip issue, that he's already financing. Congress has agreed to finance more American companies to make these chips so we can get away from that. Because that's one of the single biggest financial things that we have to do in this country today. What about the rest of the business community in this country?
Well, if it costs more to import their stuff, then we find other people that will provide that service for us. One of the problems with electric vehicles, for instance, is that what the liberals and the folks pushing, I'm not against electrical cars per se. What I'm against is using electric cars as an excuse to say it has to climb into climate control. The main producers, main providers of the cobalt and the lithium and the electric and the batteries, which weigh 1,000 or 1,200 pounds in these electric vehicles, the people that hold the majority of the goods on lithium are the Chinese. Now, they don't own the mills, the mines, I'm sorry, for lithium, but those are in the Congo. But they, in fact, or actually the cobalt's in the Congo, but they, through their business ventures, they own the 75, 80% of the cobalt and lithium industry. So when you build an electric car, you're really helping the Chinese economy big time because they own that stuff. Are there other alternatives besides going to the Chinese for electric batteries? I don't have the data on that.
Well, I mean, they're putting it. That's why Congress and the president have put in place money that will finance American companies now, IBM and several others that now will be making their own chips. They even found a way to even from the raw materials, both lithium and those, to get that done here in America so that we can begin to make our own, get this basic thing that we need, not just for cars, but as I said, for computers, just about everything, cell phones, everything we have now has to be done here. And we're beginning to fund that. So it's not as if there's no movement to get this away from China. But again, it's going to take some time, probably another generation, before we see American companies being able to produce in the numbers that we have. What about the business of Taiwan? Do you see any favor of us defending Taiwan if China should decide to pull Ukraine there?
Well, under this administration, Biden's not going to do anything if China invades Taiwan. If Donald Trump was in there, they would never even make an effort to invade Taiwan.
Well, assuming since you've mentioned Trump 4 or 5 times, is he going to be? He's clearly at this point. It appears that he's going to be the Republican nominee. Is there any other Republicans that you see on the hemisphere right now? This Vivek Ramaswamy guy has been making a great deal of noise around the country. In fact, as we discuss right now, I heard he just proposed that we move across the country to make the voting age a minimum of 25 instead of 18.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I've got a strange answer for you on this one. You can think I'm out of my mind.
I mean, he's getting a lot of press, but his problem is that he looks too. I'll be honest with you. He looks like he's one of the immigrants that we've been talking about. And for him to be running as president, I don't know how that's going to fly. But I mean, is Trump going to be the nominee despite all
my answer? You're going to think I've got a strange answer to this. The barbarians are not just at the gate; they've passed the gate. My son just came back from Washington State. He lived in Bellingham, which is the most liberal city in the country, more liberal than New York. And he came back. He's out there dating. I won't go through the history where he was dating, but he was dating a very attractive gal. And he said, "Dad, I just had to come back." He said they're defecating in front of the streets. They're the CVS, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's are moving out of the area because the people are stealing stuff and they can't prosecute them. Anyway, that's kind of what I saw the barbarians at the gate. So we need our own barbarian. If that's not Trump, we need another barbarian, someone with the same policies. I'm not a personality therapist. I get it why people don't like Trump. My former wife doesn't like Trump. I have Republican friends that dislike Trump. I have a lawyer brother who doesn't like Trump. We need our barbarian. I mean, it's the country.
Well, is DeSantis going to be does DeSantis appear, Ron DeSantis from Florida, does he appear to be a decent option as to bring the barbarians back up? He seems to he's gotten his way in Florida with the super majority in the House and Senate there in Florida, and just about all of the major counties except for the major all the counties around the state except for the major counties. But he was able to even get Miami-Dade County to go with him in the last election. So is Ron DeSantis is a reasonable alternative?
Well, Ron has done some great things for Florida. The question is who is going to be a person who has the financial resources and is divorced from the big donor class in this country, what I call the uniparty. I mean, Mitch McConnell, I agree with you. Mitch McConnell and his Taiwanese, his wife, by the way, I found is Taiwanese. She's not Chinese, but her father is from China. Ron has a lot of ties still to the big donor class. By that, I mean the Bushes, Paul Ryan. They're a big DeSantis fans because they hate Trump, because Trump is a disruptor. You know, he's going to go in there and break up the cartels of policy in Washington, D.C. And so there are as many Republicans opposing him that are in the establishment class in Washington, D.C. As there are Democrats that are against Trump. So the problem with Ron is he has some great policies, but is he going to be able to divorce himself from those? The problem with Ron is he has some great policies, but is he going to be able to divorce himself from those huge financial donors that, let's face it, they determine what policies you're going to have because they're donating the money to you.
Well, I
And
mean,
that's
he's got to do what he got to do to get the nomination, because
right.
he's not
Right.
going to be able to get the kind of individual donations that, despite
Right.
all
Sure.
that Trump has gone through, there are a
Sure.
tremendous amount of individuals who continue to send money to him whenever he puts a cry
Right.
out. And I mean, he's already a billionaire, although if these lawsuits and all this stuff continue, I don't know how much more money he can keep. But he did go over there and open up two new golf courses.
That's right.
The money must be still there.
You
But
still got money.
DeSantis
Yeah.
has got to do what he got to do to get that nomination.
Sure.
If he doesn't get nomination, doesn't make any difference what he thinks.
Right. Well, again, now some of his ties. I wasn't that familiar with the ERIC system, ERIC system. I don't know if you are or not. It was a system that was there were at one time 33 states were part of it. It was designed to increase election integrity. It stands for Election Umpty Squad. I don't know, ERIC. You can look it up. But
yeah.
I found out that, in fact, that was a program that was really being pushed by the Democrats that ended up with a lot of people. The system allowed fake voters to vote. And so it was actually part of an election fraud system. And DeSantis finally got rid of it in Florida. And other states are dropping it. I think Missouri, of those 33, I know Florida's out of it now, but we find out that, in fact, that ERIC system that was designed to help reduce election fraud has ended up being a tool of the progressives to manufacture illegal voters. So,
well, wait a minute. Now, again, every time I talk with somebody about this, everybody has a different thing that they've located to find that there's election fraud. But the fact of the matter still remains. Even in Republican-dominated states with Republican secretaries of state, they found that they did not have any election fraud. The amount of people who might have got through the system to vote were minuscule at best, and that is simply not an issue that's happening here. And and again, if you've got a guy that's calling up a Secretary of State and telling him to find 1,800 voters because that's what he needs to win, he doesn't care what system it is. He just wants to win. That's the issue. We just haven't found that to be significant enough to swing any election.
About the rhino governor of Georgia and the Secretary of State, they could care less about Trump's winning or losing. We already know that they.
But they both voted for him. They both supported him.
They did not comply with the state of Georgia's election laws. They allowed Stacey Abrams, who is not an elected official in the state of Georgia, to determine the outcome of a lot of those election decisions. Not the state legislature, which is Republican led. I agree with you. Every one of those battleground states where there was a Republican legislature, they did not follow their own laws and the Constitution. The Constitution says that the legislatures are responsible for certifying electoral colleges, not the governors, not the Secretary of State, not the election boards, not Stacey Abrams.
Well, whatever they did in Georgia didn't work out too well for Stacey, because she lost both times in two hands with that. So whatever they were doing, it didn't work out well for Stacey. Tim Scott, a Carolinian,
right?
To me, he looks pretty good. I mean, he looks pretty good. He says all the right things.
Right.
He didn't get together with the senator from New Jersey to put together, I think it was a decent immigration bill and some other things, police
right.
bill. They weren't able to come up with anything. But Tim looks like a decent alternative. But again, because of the party that he's running from, I don't know that nationwide he's going to be able to get any traction.
Well, you're going to be surprised with my decision. I lived in South Carolina, and I liked Tim Scott as far as his personality. I did like his issues. Then I found out, guess who in 2022 in the Senate race in Alaska, guess who he supported? He actually campaigned for. Lisa Murkowski. I see that smile on your face. So you know now I'm not, I socially, just like I love George Bush. I loved his wife more, quite frankly. But I love Tim Scott personally. But when you say that he's a conservative, you can't use a conservative and Lisa Murkowski in the same sentence without smiling, because she's, because of that, what will they call it? It wasn't called the forced choice voting system. I forgot what it is, but you know what I'm talking about. Alaska is one of those states that came up with this convoluted voting system in which the person that had the most votes in the primary, in this case, it was not Lisa Murkowski in the primary Republican, she ended up winning the general election, but even though she didn't have the most votes in the primary, because I'm going to call it forced choice, but it's another word for it. But it's not the election systems in every other state, and because of that, she was able to win the election based on this convoluted system, which really favors the more liberal candidates, I guess is a way to put it. But yeah, when Tim did, I didn't believe Tim Scott's pushing for Lisa Murkowski. I said, what in the world's wrong with Tim?
Well, maybe he likes her, and what I often tell people is that we usually vote and support. We always vote for people and support people that we like first. If I like you, then I'll generally be inclined to vote for you. I mean, in his case, of course, he couldn't vote for her, but he's inclined to, because he liked her. I mean, they'd be good friends, and he couldn't find a good reason to oppose her other than she's a D and he's an R.
In answer to your question about who is alternative, some other people, Trump or DeSantis, a guy that I like, and you're going to think I'm out of my mind, is Kennedy. I like him because the rest of the Democrats hate him, but he has some very good. Now again, because he's a Democrat, how far is the apple doesn't far from the tree. Even the Republicans, the apple doesn't far from the tree. No matter what they say in running for office, how are they going to really legislate? How are they going to? What's their policy going to be? How are they going to really, govern the country? Will he go back to more Dixiecrat, which John F. Kennedy right now, as you know, would be called a rabid right winger, because he was a very conservative gentleman, and I loved John F. Kennedy, in spite of his somewhat unusual sexual behaviors with his secretaries and so forth. But he would be called a right winger in today's political environment. I don't know if you agree with that, but
well, I mean, I think that was obvious, but that's one of the reasons why he chose Lyndon Johnson as his vice president. And it was a wise choice for him at the time, and it got him the votes. It secured for him the votes, Western and many in a few southern states that he needed otherwise. One more thing here. Let's hop back overseas.
Sure.
Is Ukraine going to end up losing this battle with Russia?
Well, despite what the administration is saying, and even some of the Pentagon folks who I don't have much confidence in, Russia is, in fact, beating these guys. Now, you won't see that in the mainstream media, and you'll see, they tried to kill Putin and so on and so forth. I think the whole thing is a disaster, because you look at the people that are dying on both sides of the equation. But we have no business being there, in my opinion, and spending the kind of money we're spending. When you look at all the stuff we've got to worry about in this country, we can't even secure our own border. I think Biden just approved another $1 billion or whatever. We know that Ukraine, from prior experience with them, is a very corrupt country when you look at the politics. I mean, we don't know, we have no way to track. I haven't even seen any of our news people over there. I don't know.
Let's face it. Outside of England, Germany, I guess you could include France in there, a touch of Sweden, and
Norway, perhaps.
Norway. I mean,
Finland.
We just don't have a whole lot of faith in democracies outside of and Canada.
Right.
I don't have a whole lot of faith in countries outside of those few.
Yeah, anyway, we don't know where the money's going.
We got we get some great boxers and wrestlers from out of Ukraine.
Right.
But yeah, it's they're both Russians. That's the other part.
That's right.
They're all Russians.
That's exactly right.
And right. They've had this. People don't remember, but they did have this battle some 15, 20 years ago where Russia tried to take over Ukraine back then.
Right.
And they just weren't, they didn't have the heart for it. But this time, this guy, Putin, is determined not to be insulted or to be denied. And to me, it's just a question of that. Now, if for some reason NATO changes their mind and allows Ukraine to become a member of it, that would obligate us more than we already have. But I just don't see a good outcome for this as long as Putin is the leader of Russia.
But you bring up a good point because of Putin's. Well, he was a Secret Service kind of guy, KGB. His ego is such. He is not going, while he's alive, he is not going to voluntarily withdraw people. If people say, well, he did in Afghanistan. Well, it's a different issue here. These, like you say, are Russians. These are not sheep herders. These are, Russians that he's fighting against. It's really his own people, really. His ego is not going to allow him to get out of there. Now, how many people is going to take to lives to lose? One thing that's come out of this conflict, I don't have any inside information on what exactly militarily, how much Russia's winning, 50%, 60% versus the Ukrainians. I do know that it's showing that the Russian army wasn't as great as we thought they were, are they?
Well, no, I mean, they weren't fully prepared for the kind of resistance that they've gotten. And they've been out of ground warfare since they left Afghanistan.
Right.
They've been able to pretty much talk a good game. But again, it does come down to a question of attrition. Now, the thing for all of us to watch would be if for some reason, because quite frankly, Ukraine doesn't meet the standards for being a member of NATO at this point. But if for some reason NATO agrees to let them in it, that's going to be a big tail of the tape for the U.S. president and Congress to determine if we're actually going to fulfill our pledge to support NATO and NATO members when they're in conflict. That is going to be a big time deal if it should happen. But I just don't, given the statistics of what's happening, it just doesn't look good for Ukraine in the long run to survive this.
Well, that's right. I agree. I don't think there's any with this current Pentagon folks in power and with the in the current administration. I don't see they're going to make any hardcore decisions about Ukraine or entry or whatever. They're not going to. There's a lot of hesitancy, weakness, whatever you want to call it. I mean, some of us like myself, I see it as a weakness, but I don't think we have depleted so much of our own arms, our buildup, our inventory. We have aircraft that we're flying that are 25, 30 years old, and we have a lot of needs in our military to upgrade our new revisions aircraft, the F-35, so forth, that has some problems with it. But we're depleting a lot of our own stockpiles of ammunition and missiles and so forth that are being provided to Ukrainians. And we don't know, like you said, we don't know how much of that is going on the black market, being sold, to other countries via the Ukrainian, they have a huge black market over there. We don't know how much of that is even being used against the Russians. We do know that a lot of that stuff, you can't just send a missile system over there and those folks can't automatically become experts in using that missile system. And there's training is required. Do we have people over there now, just like in Vietnam, as advisors, before we actually put a lot of ground troops on the ground, actually helping them, train them in how to use these systems? I don't know. I mean, it's not very transparent right now what we're doing and not doing over there. So I don't know. I think it was a big mistake in terms of depletion of our resources. I think there were other alternatives. Once Russia crossed that line and got in there, it was too late because we don't have for some of the reasons I just went through, those 10 deterrence things. I just don't think we have the deterrence under the current administration that we would have had with a stronger president. I don't know. I don't know who's running the country. I don't know anybody does, Fred. I don't think it's Biden. I don't know who is running the country. I think, honestly, I think Barack Obama, Susan Rice, a bunch of them are getting together on Saturday night and deciding what's to be done and giving Biden cue cards. I mean, I hate to put it that way because it's funny, but it's not funny, you know. I don't know what's going on.